This evening, we'd like to consider just briefly the gospel that we heard from Luke chapter 17 and the story of those 10 lepers. Let's come to the Lord in prayer just real briefly. Heavenly Father, sanctify us by the truth, for your word alone is truth. Amen. So this story that we probably know at least a little bit, it starts out with these 10 lepers. 10 lepers means these are 10 men who are by the side of the road, and they're kicked out of their own town. They're kicked out of their city, and they're in that way because they have a disease called leprosy. There are people still today who have leprosy. It means that your skin turns basically pure white because it's dying. Your skin is dying. It's not a very pleasant sounding thing to say, and I keep trying to think of some nicer way to say it, right? But there's just nothing else to say about it. People still get it today in Africa and in other Asian countries where there's less medical care, but these men had leprosy. And they stood beside the side of the road, and as Jesus came by, they cried out to him and said, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us, have mercy on us." And then they went off into town. Now, we don't know what exactly they meant by saying, "Have mercy on us." In Jesus' day, if you needed help, you said, "Have mercy on us," right? That's how you asked for help. But likely this is also an expression of faith, isn't it? These men very well could have had faith in God. They trusted God to take care of them, and they were looking to Jesus to help out, to be that priest on behalf of God, the intermediary, the intercessor, to give them the help. And after they cried out for help then, Jesus said, "Okay, go into town and get some help. Show yourselves to the priests." There was a good party for a while, right? Because they all look around and they say, "Hey, we're well. We're all good. We are clean. We are whole, and everything is good. Party." And so they go to show themselves to the priests, and we know that one person comes back and he says, "Thank you." Right? He says, "Thank you." And Jesus then extends to him and really to us through him an invitation. And he says, "Where are the other 9? Didn't I heal 9? And those words are a gentle rebuke. They're an invitation from Jesus to us and to everybody else to join with these men and give thanks. That's what God would have us do this evening. And so it's an invitation to you and to me too. Now, what we are asked to do here, in order that we could join in with them and give thanks, is to recognize that, first of all, God is generous in this way to everybody, and he asks everybody to consider giving thanks. And what I mean to say is, we don't know, right, as we read this story, we don't know if the 10 men were believers or not, do we? If you look at the lesson, if you had your own Bible out and you looked at the lesson, you would wonder to yourself, I wonder if they believed in God or not. Maybe they do, right? Maybe they don't. We really don't know where they stand before God, but God still gives them his generousness, his generosity. And certainly we think of what God does for the whole world today. God still provides for everybody. And so the first thing that we learn from this story is whether or not people believe in God, God shows grace to everybody, and he expects thanksgiving. He expects thanks for it all. And then we go from there and we learn really, well, this gives us a moment to pause, doesn't it? It gives us a moment we should pause and all think, because here's the religious person, right? The religious person thinks we should come to church and we should give thanks to God and we should sing the right songs and we should pray the right prayers, and that would be appropriate ways to give thanks. That's what the religious person tends to think. If I give thanks in all these right ways, well, then that's going to be thanksgiving to God. And then if it's really going to be good thanks, it's going to be thanksgiving for the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And what I mean by that is, think about how often our prayers are about Jesus and his redemption and his death for us. Good things to give thanks to God for, but they're not the only things to give thanks to God for. In fact, as we learn from this lesson, everybody is called to give thanks to God for everything. God is gracious to all. So the religious person has no priority, right? No right before everybody else to give thanks to God. Just because you're religious doesn't mean that you've got this inside track on how to give thanks to God. And at the same time, the irreligious person, the person who is not very religious, tends to think to themselves, you know what? If I'm just thankful, that's enough. If I have a thankful heart, that'll be good enough. And I've been there, a lot myself. That's something that I battle with all the time. The person who's not very religious tends to feel like, well, I don't have to come to church to give thanks to God, do I? I don't have to say anything about it to give thanks to God. Do I actually have to express my thankfulness? Neither the religious person nor the not very religious person has figured out what God really wants. The religious person thinks that they can give thanks by just doing all the right things. If I show up to the church at the right time, if I'm saying the right hymns and the right prayers and the right songs, well, then I'm good. And the not very religious person says, well, as long as I have a little bit of feeling inside, well, then that's good, isn't it? And neither of them has really the heart that Jesus calls for here. Jesus calls for, I think we can say, it's gratitude. That's what Jesus wants from you, from me. But you know what gratitude is? Have you ever noticed what does gratitude have within it? It's got right built into the word. It's an attitude, isn't it? Gratitude is an attitude. And this is something that I admit I struggle with as much as anybody else. In that I find it incredibly hard to wake up every day and have something in particular to be thankful for. Gratitude is not just a general sense that I'm thankful for life. Gratitude is a sense that is the specific awareness that I wake up today and I say, here's a particular thing that I'm thankful for. And I can put it in my prayers. And I can turn to my wife and say, I'm thankful today for. And I can turn to my kids and say, I'm thankful for this. And I've thought about it a little bit, right? I've spent a little bit of time about it because it matters to me. It impacts my life, right? Gratitude has to be this attitude that is built into us. And how many of us can say that we have such an attitude? Are we maybe more likely to be the religious person who says, if I just show up to church and I say the right songs and the prayers, that'll be good enough? Or maybe we're the person who just says, if I have the right feeling in my heart, that'll be okay. But gratitude is an attitude that can pick out the particulars in my life and say, here's what I'm really thankful for. And I can tell you, I can share that with you because it makes a difference in my day. So how are we going to get such a heart? A heart that's like the leper that says, I have something very particular, and I'm going to go back to Jesus, and I'm going to tell him, here's what I'm thankful for. I am thankful, Jesus, that you made me well. We realize that what brings the leper back to Jesus is the fact that he is accepted. Acceptance is what changes your attitude. Acceptance is what changes us so that we can come before God with something particular to give thanks. And it's the same thing that you learned back when you were a kid and you went to your teacher. And maybe you never had this moment, but I used to have it all the time, where I would bring my teacher some piece of work that I had done that was miserable. It should probably get an F on it. And the teacher said, oh, that's so nice, and put a little smiley face on the top of it. And because that they accepted me, no matter how bad I was, how sloppy I had done the work, then I felt grateful, didn't I? I turned around and I actually had something in particular to give thanks to. And see, what God has done for you and for me, and Jesus, of course, is accepted you and I. We don't realize how bad the work that we turn in really is. right? How sloppy it's been done, how terrible it is. And yet God still says to you and to me in Jesus, I love you. You mean more to me than the world itself, and I love you so much that I will send Jesus to die for you. He will give up his life so that I can welcome you to me, welcome you into my arms, welcome you into my house. I can accept you. And since God accepts you, how can you not wake up every day and say, I'm thankful for that? There's so much gratitude for you and I that we can have because God has said to us, I accept you. And so even if you have nothing else that you're particularly grateful for this year, I pray that God's acceptance of you has warmed your heart. It stirs your heart. It makes you excited to see how God welcomes you to his feet, just like Jesus welcomed that leper, and you can say, I'm grateful for that. And you can go home and take that with you. Because God's acceptance changes our attitude. Let's come before the Lord now with our offerings. As we collect our offerings, the choir is going to sing for us their piece, Let Every Heart Be Thankful. Let every heart sing praise, Let every thankful, how's it go? Let every thankful heart sing praise. So as we collect our offerings, the choir will sing the piece for us.